welcome to episode 5 of our series, Data is the Fuel, Analytics, AI, and Decision Intelligence. There's a saying that data is the new oil, but in truth, data is more like electricity. It powers everything, innovation, transformation, and the decisions that shape the future of organizations. But electricity only matters when it's harnessed correctly, and the same is true for data. Today, we're diving into how companies can build strong data foundations, modernize legacy systems, harness AI responsibly, and measure the real business value of their investments. Because moving beyond dashboards and reports toward true decision intelligence is not just a technical challenge, it's a cultural and strategic one. Our guest is Aniruddha Maru, a leader who has spent over 16 years working across AI edge infrastructure, DevOps, cloud-native technologies, distributed systems, and microservices. He's guided organizations through complex transformations, scaled teams from the ground up, and helped leaders think strategically about data as a long-term competitive advantage. Together, we'll explore what a data-first transformation really looks like when it's done right, how enterprises can prepare for the next wave of AI-driven disruption, and the leadership mindset required to make data and AI a sustainable force for growth. So let's get started. Aniruddha, welcome to the show.
Thanks. I'm really excited to be here. A little nervous, but mostly excited. Thank you for having me.
So, many organizations say they are data-driven, but in reality, they often struggle to move beyond dashboards and reporting. From your perspective, what are the core building blocks of a true data-first transformation, both on the technical and organizational side, and how can leaders avoid the common pitfalls?
Yeah, so let me start by saying what the data-first transformation is not. So it's not about buying Snowflake and hiring a data science team. It's not about building more dashboards. And it's definitely not making every decision by a committee while you're waiting for the data to tell you what to do. A true data-first transformation, in my mind, is fundamentally about 3 things: infrastructure, culture, and decision velocity. On the infra side, you need to think about data in layers. First of all, there's data accessibility. Can anybody in your organization actually get to the data they need without filing a ticket and waiting 2 weeks? This means you need to invest in proper data warehousing, clean pipelines, and self-service tools. You don't want to silo your data to a specific team. You want to democratize the access to data. Second is data quality and governance. This is where a lot of teams stumble. They collect everything, they organize nothing, and you end up with what I call data graveyards. There's terabytes of information, nobody trusts that information, nobody knows how to make sense of it. And if you look at it, you're just spending 30 minutes looking at, wait, is this counting active users or registered users? And third is operational systems. You want to be able to actually use the data in real time, not just analyze it retrospectively. You want your product to be personalize the experience based on your data. I'll give one short example. That's Instagram. Nobody is manually looking at what reels you should be seeing. Nobody is arranging your feed to look in a certain way. And there's undeniably a lot of AI behind the scenes. But there's also a lot of data-based decisions happening. If you watch a reel on one topic, you're more likely to see reels on the same topic or related topics. So here's where it gets interesting. So the technical stack is actually the easy part of this. The organizational side is where these transformations live or die. I would say there's various aspects to this. First up, there's actual executive sponsorship. You don't want your executives to give you lip service on, yes, data is important, but not when the data shows up, they don't actually look at it. They're still making instinct and gut calls while still giving lip service to being data-driven. You want data access to be distributed and democratized. You don't want the old model where a business team will ask questions. It'll go to the analyst and data science teams. They will run some queries and get back insights in a deck. That's just too slow in 2025. You need to upskill your entire organization. You want PMs and your GTM teams to be writing queries or at least working with these BI tools. And this doesn't mean everybody becomes a data scientist, to be clear. There are a lot of tools now which can use AI to translate plain English queries and questions into SQL queries and get appropriate data from your data lakehouse. And finally, you want clear decision rights and processes. You want to be explicit about which decisions must be data informed. When is it okay to override data-driven recommendation? Without this clarity, you'll just get people cherry-picking data to support their pre-existing conclusions. There's another psychological aspect to this, which is when you tell people to use data, you're kind of telling them that their intuition is wrong. And people have built their careers on intuition and experience. And when you ask them to admit maybe they're wrong about their intuition, that's uncomfortable. And there's an aspect of psychological safety. You want to develop this organization skill that it's okay to change your mind, it's okay to see experiments fail, and it's okay to be data-driven and turn your decisions around. One of my litmus tests for whether a company is truly data-first, I'll ask them what percentage of their product roadmap actually comes from data-driven insights versus just executive intuition. And more often than not, you'll see the number is very small. I ask them how long it takes them for a new business question, for them to answer a new business question with data. If it takes more than a day or two, their data infrastructure is not mature. Ask them about what was their last failed experiment and something they tried that did not work. If there is nothing, then they're probably not running enough experiments and they're still in the data is salad dressing phase.
Thank you. How can enterprises modernize legacy data systems to prepare for AI and advanced analytics?
It's a great question and one I get all the time. People have built their legacy applications, everything is working, they want to modernize it, but they're not exactly sure how to go about it. I would say successful modernization is not about ripping everything out at once. You want to create a strategic bridge between legacy and modern systems while delivering incremental value. And one way to think about this is you start with the data layer, not the application. Instead of trying to rewrite your application, start by decoupling your data from a legacy monolith application. This is kind of the foundation of AI readiness. So create a pipeline that fits alongside your legacy systems and transfers your data into a modern data lake or a lakehouse. This way your applications continue running, but you get clean and timely data. Once the data is liberated, now you can start training your models and delivering value while your applications are still humming along. A common pattern to do the application rewrite or system migration is called the strangler fig pattern. And this is one of my recommended ways to do it. Instead of a big bang rewrite, you gradually strangle the legacy system by routing new features and capabilities into modern microservices. Concretely speaking about implementation detail, you would add an API gateway as your control plane, put it in front of your legacy system, and now every request is flowing through this gateway. And gradually now you can extract one domain at a time and reroute the request from your API gateway into a new microservice. This is where you would identify a domain, and maybe that's a customer profile management or inventory tracking, whatever it may be. You want to isolate and abstract out a domain-oriented service. And finally, as each domain proves successful, you keep on iterating and accelerate this process of migration. The other reality in today's world we have to face is edge and cloud kind of living together in a hybrid way. Increasingly, AI applications are moving to the edge, and we are seeing this everywhere from retail to hospitality to factories. Whether it's for latency purpose, privacy, or cost, your architecture needs to support a hybrid deployment pretty much from day one. You want to design your microservices to be deployment agnostic. use containerization with Docker and Kubernetes, so the same service can run on AWS, GCP, or on-prem on the edge. And you'll implement proper data synchronization patterns so that your edge systems can operate with eventual consistency. I've seen retailers put ML models for theft detection right on the floor of a store. And they're syncing aggregated results back to the central systems whenever there's internet connection. They could not do this with the legacy client-server architecture. There's too many things that can go wrong in that model. So as a PM, some practical guideline, I would say map your data flows first. Where does the data originate? Where does it need to go to for AI or analytics? What is the latency requirement? You want to identify your most painful bottlenecks. Is it data access? Is it slow deployment? Or inability to scale? Pick one constraint and try to solve for that. And this way you generate momentum, deliver incremental value, and continue to spread your modernization.
Let's talk about balance. Data governance and compliance are becoming more important, especially with AI models relying on high-quality, well-managed data. At the same time, strict governance can stifle experimentation. What frameworks or approaches have you seen that enable both trust and speed in data-driven organizations?
Yeah, so I would say the kind of tension between governance and innovation is actually a false dichotomy. Leaders often frame this as a trade-off. More governance means less speed. But actually, in my experience, it's been the reverse. Thoughtful governance will actually accelerate innovation. And here's why. Ungoverned data creates technical debt that compounds over time. Your teams will just spend weeks tracking down data quality issues. They cannot trust their models, and ultimately they cannot trust the decisions made from them. This is not chaos. This is not speed. It's chaos, really masquerading as agility. In terms of where do you draw the line, I would say don't draw a line. You want to build a framework. I'll give you kind of 3 building blocks for that. One is the paved roads approach. Instead of building guardrails everywhere, you want to create well-lit, easy paths for 80% of the use cases. If you think about companies like Netflix or Spotify, they have built internal platforms where data scientists get pre-approved governed data sets by default. You want to experiment quickly? You use this paved road. You don't run into governance friction at all. You need something custom, you need to go off-road, and that's where you're accepting the compliance overhead. So you give your teams the speed where it matters most. Another innovation that's happened over the last few years is governance as code. Instead of a manual review process, teams would embed data quality checks, privacy filters, and compliance rules directly into the CI/CD pipeline. And there's great tools now that can automate all of this. There's Great Expectations or Monte Carlo or even DBT tests. These would make governance a technical problem, not a bureaucratic one. And your data pipeline will fail if it violates a governance rule, just like your code will fail if it fails a unit test. And third, I would say, is a tiered data architecture. You want clear zones with different governance levels. As an example, at Standard, we have 3 levels. There's a bronze data lakehouse. This one has minimal governance for experimentation, and it has the most raw, unfiltered data. Then there's a silver data lakehouse. You get some more oversight and cleaner data. And finally, there's the gold tier, which contains customer-facing data, which is fully compliant and cleaned up, ready to go to be given to an external user at any time. So this approach lets your teams experiment with safe sandboxes. As an example, data science team can work in the bronze lakehouse. They can keep iterating, moving faster without running into governance issues. But a product manager trying to display data for a client would use the gold warehouse where all the compliance is already in place. Now, in terms of drawing the line, obviously needless to say, you want to definitely avoid customer harm or regulatory risk. But if you get into this, you want to ask yourself, what's the actual blast radius if something goes wrong here? A data scientist exploring churn patterns in a development environment? That's low risk, minimal government required. But an AI model making lending decisions? That's high risk. You want a robust governance model in place. So the key insight I would say is that governance should not be a gate, it should be a gradient. It increases with impact, not with innovation.
Measuring the ROI of data-driven transformation is notoriously difficult. How do you approach it?
Yeah, I agree. Measuring ROI of data-driven transformation is always challenging. And largely because the benefit manifests in non-linear or long-term or indirect ways. So I would say you want to measure velocity, not just specific outcomes. In an early stage, you want to track how fast your team can answer some business questions. Can your product manager get user cohort analysis in 2 hours instead of 2 weeks? And that's real ROI. Even though you cannot immediately put a dollar monetary value to it, your team is now moving faster. At one startup I worked with, they tagged time to insight as their North Star metric. They went from taking 3 weeks to analyze A/B test result to 2 days. Now that doesn't show up as cost saving, but it does mean they were shipping 4x more experiments per quarter. That's the kind of impact data-driven transformation can have. You also want to tie data investments to decision milestones, not hypothetical value. You don't want to say our data platform will improve decision making. You want to say this particular metric or this particular dashboard will help us decide whether to expand to European market by Q2. Now, these are the kind of things that if you put in front of a CFO or a CEO, they can immediately relate to it. They can immediately understand the value of making those decisions faster.
With your cross-industry view, where do you see decision intelligence and AI creating the most immediate disruption? Are there specific industries or use cases that will leapfrog others? And what should leaders start doing today to prepare?
Yeah, everybody is looking for the next killer app industry, healthcare, robotics, supply chain. But the real pattern seeing is the biggest impact will not be industry specific. It's going to hit wherever decisions are currently made by gut feeling, politics, or whoever screams loudest in a meeting room. You want to think about it this way. Decision intelligence is not about making better decisions in a vacuum. It's about making visible the decisions you did not know you were making. I was talking to a founder recently, and he said something I've heard numerous times before. We spent 6 months building a feature that our CEO was convinced our users wanted, but turns out we were just optimizing for what made us feel more innovative, not what actually moved retention. Now that's an invisible decision. And there's confirmation bias and organizational politics involved, which are disguised as strategy. So in terms of immediate disruption, it's in a few places. It's hitting anywhere with high-frequency, repeatable decisions. You don't want to rely on decision intelligence for answering, should we enter this market? But rather the thousands of micro decisions that happen every day. Pricing adjustment, source allocation, intent prioritization. These are just too fast and too numerous for traditional analytics. AI is scary good at spotting these patterns that humans will miss. So you want to instrument these decision points first. And really, it doesn't mean just throw AI at the wall. You're going to have teams who take AI as a teams who use AI as a first-class citizen in their decision-making process will really have the biggest impact to show for it. And then there's a kind of disrupting this where expert intuition is happening. And now this is kind of uncomfortable to talk about, but it's happening. There are domains where 20 years of experience is getting compressed into models which can answer a question in a few minutes. Now, the experts aren't going away, but their role is shifting from I know the answer to I know which answers the AI cannot answer yet. As an example, if you look at retail stores, the way CPGs, that's consumer packaged goods, CPG companies, the way they're making decisions on which product to promote in a store or which end caps to install in a store, it's all largely based on blind intuition. And it's costing them a ton of money. Now you install a vision analytics product like Standard, and suddenly you unlock data that you never thought was possible. And finally, it's hitting coordination costs. The real innovation is not where individual decisions are better, it's eliminating the meeting tax. All of us have been in meetings where we thought, wow, what a waste of my time. And these are the kind of meetings where everybody is just talking over each other or trying to align on a single goal. This is where decision intelligence can really provide a lot of value. It can eliminate all those meetings given that it has the right context and the right data. And you have to think about context engineering as an organizational problem. An engineer needs to understand why they should prefer one architecture over another. And that's because the end client needs one thing versus the other. Or a product manager needs to understand what a customer actually wants instead of what the GTM team is telling them that the customer wants. All of this comes down to having the right context, having the right data, and getting meaningful insights out of this. And we really have to be honest about which decisions we are willing to hand off partially or fully. I see a lot of leaders who would say they want AI-driven decision-making, but then they override every decision or every recommendation that AI gives you if it doesn't match your intuition. That's not data-driven and that's not adoption. That's just expensive theater. The companies, in my opinion, that leapfrog will not be the ones with the best AI models. They will be ones who redesign their decision architecture to take advantage of AI. In 3 to 5 years, our competitive advantage is not going to be we have AI. It will be we rebuilt our product, we rebuilt our decision-making framework, and AI is now woven into that fabric, not an add-on.
Great. In our very last question, you've scaled teams and organizations during major transformations. Beyond the technology itself, what leadership and cultural shifts are required to make data and AI a sustainable source of competitive advantage?
Yeah, great question. I would say technology is actually the easy part of this. The real transformation happens when you fundamentally change how decisions are made. I remember I was working with one organization where executive team would always override data-driven recommendation with their gut feel whenever things got uncomfortable. And the data team eventually became demoralized because their insights were just not being given value and they just pretty much all quit. So really it's about a culture shift of going from I think to what does the data suggest? And that's kind of terrifying for a lot of leaders. They got to be successful based on their instinct and their experience. And now you're asking them to question those instincts, to validate that with data. And that takes real vulnerability. But here's the thing, it's not about replacing human judgment, it's about augmenting it. The best leaders would say, here's what the data shows, but here's what my experience tells me, and that's why I'm making this call. You have to be transparent about why you're doing something, why you're disagreeing with the data, but while still recognizing that the data shows something else. And the second is kind of the psychological safety around failure. AI and data work requires a lot of experimentation. And that means things will go wrong, things will fail, and things will break. You want your organization to create this culture that doesn't punish failure. You want to give people the safety net around taking risks, running experiments, and admitting when they're wrong. Otherwise, you'll never get breakthrough insights. Finally, you need to democratize data access. I've worked and seen too many companies where data is just hoarded by a central team and everybody has to file a ticket and wait 2 weeks for a basic report. But this is not data-driven culture, this is data gatekeeping culture. You want product managers and GTM team members to be running their own queries, asking their own questions of the data. You obviously need governance on top of that, but it should not be a roadblock.